Hello, I'm back this week with a new crypto market review, general market review, really talking about a lot today. Obviously, we've had a lot going on the past week, over a week now. I was on holiday last week, so took the week off completely looking at charts. That's why there was no YouTube uploads last week, but I'm back this week and back to a bit of a shit show, really. I have a lot to talk about today. Since the last Tuesday market review, a lot has changed. You know, I had a pretty strong bias just before I went on holiday and come back to a lot of war escalation, obviously with the Iran and USA situation and Israel, which is still ongoing right now and looks to be getting towards a ceasefire. And we're going to be talking a lot about that today. But yeah, bear with me today because my head's a bit fuzzy with everything right now. There's a lot of mixed signals for me, and you know, quite easily things can get resolved and we can look at some potentially good bullish conditions going into July. Although, you know, we are in that summer seasonality now, and I will discuss that a little bit further right now. So I've discussed it in previous Tuesday market reviews and just general market reviews and streams, but you know, the past 2 years we have seen a similar thing from Bitcoin, right, where price gets this strong like trend up through Q1 into Q1, Q2, and into Q3 we get that range high that forms, and then what happens is during this Q3 we deviate the range high, and then eventually we roll over before, you know, selling off for summer, and then seeing a bottom towards August, September, right? We had that same sort of thing last year where we broke up Q1, right? Q1, Q2 into Q3, we topped out in June, failing to sort of break above that range high, and then rolling over again before bottoming in August and September, right? This time was slightly different. Of course, we had the rally in Q4 before selling off for Q1, but now we're moving into that June period, and that we got that move into range high again into May, into June, and you know, now we're potentially looking at doing a similar thing and deviating this range high. So what we have to consider, right, is the fact that we did get a weekly close under this range high. Yes, we technically got that weekly close under the range high, but when we look at price action and we look at the 4 hours, something we have to consider here is the fact that, okay, yes, on Friday, you know, we were selling off, and then sort of like war news escalated over this trading period, and you know, the worst case of, or the worst signs of the war happened towards the lows and happened towards the Sunday, which now price is completely shaken off. So yeah, of course, that's a positive sign. But something we have to consider is the fact that maybe if we didn't have, you know, this whole war escalation, which now we are seeing signs that, you know, there's a ceasefire and hopefully everything is in the past, we have to consider the fact that maybe we would have never got this breakdown, right? And if we had never got this breakdown, would we still be holding this weekly support area, right? Which technically we are. You know, this week is going to be very important. I think if Bitcoin can close the week back above 104,400 area, I will throw my downside bias out the window, and I will talk a little bit more about why I think we can trade down, and why I'm actually positioned short right now for a move down, and happily will eat that bias, right? And you know, like I said at the start of the video, I did have a very strong upside bias over the past few market reviews, basically because of this weekly SR flip, right? Just the basis of the fact that we were holding to Junes and into summer, or whether this is now sort of like a bear trap. We bottom on war and we bottom on FUD before we break out into July, which obviously would be a really nice scenario, and we get sort of like a summer rally through the months of July into August, right? In this weekly support area, which we kind of still are, right? Depending how we close this week will be very telling on whether this is, you know, now a bearish retest before we roll over and we put in a similar move like we've done, you know, the past 2 Junes and into summer, or whether this is now sort of like a bear trap. We bottom on war and we bottom on FUD before we break out into July, which obviously would be a really nice scenario, and we get sort of like a summer rally through the months of July into August, right? So to go on sort of like my higher time frame outlook here, just to not get everyone confused, like despite what I discussed today, I think, you know, my higher time frame bias remains the same. I expect a positive year for Bitcoin. I expect Bitcoin to continue to trade much higher this year. I believe that the cycle will not top any earlier than October this year and can top as late as November 2026. I've got a lot of higher time frame thoughts on my YouTube. Make sure you go and check those out, the high time frame thoughts videos, and also on my Medium, on my blog, I've got some write-ups discussing why I expect a cycle top no earlier than October. But I really do expect the market to trade to like 140 to 200k this year, into next year, and I don't expect it to come any earlier than October, right? As in like a cycle top. I think we still have the chance of putting in like a pretty strong like parabolic and euphoric phase of Bitcoin, which I think we're yet to see this really like euphoric and parabolic period from Bitcoin. Whether that actually happens this time round in this cycle, obviously we're a much larger asset now. We're being traded by quite large institutions and funds and things like that. So, you know, the chances of a larger liquid move are probably much lower, but I do think we can still see that aggressive sort of euphoric period that will mark a cycle top, and we're yet to see that personally for me. So yeah, just to keep on track, that my higher time frame thoughts remain positive for Bitcoin, and I think that as long as you continue to accumulate Bitcoin over the next couple months, no matter the price, I'm pretty sure you can sell higher going into the end of this year, into Q4, into 2026 as well. So looking at the monthly a little bit, why I think that we can retrace this week, and obviously again it's really kind of a bit of a head fuzz at the moment because we've got all this war stuff going on. It throws a spanner in the works. Like at the end of the day, no matter what bias you have right now, your bias will completely get thrown out the window depending on the situation with war, right? If you're short and some like confirmed positive news comes out, which we did just have, that there is a ceasefire, but the market didn't necessarily react to it. So maybe this is a sign of weakness, right? So it's a little bit of a mind game at the moment with this back and forth between the ceasefire or not, and how the market's responding to it. It often makes you overthink what's actually happening. So today, given that we've basically confirmed now that there is a ceasefire, then we should look at the market open and in an hour and a half, and that will be the true signs of what the market thinks about this whole thing. Because as I already said, right, the move happened over the weekend, and now we're back to trading where we were last week. So we're essentially resetting the whole of the weekend trading, right? We've reset the move, we've reset the whole of the weekend trading. You know, we've shaken off that war move and that war FUD, and we're resuming as we were. So now if positive news does come out this week about which it has, right, and we don't respond well to that, then I'm fairly sure price will roll again. Along with that, when we look at like the prior monthly closes historically over the past 8 months, we've always seen some sort of risking off into and around the monthly close, right? Bitcoin historically like sort of risks off into the monthly close or goes sort of sideways. So if we don't see a response from today's open, I'm fairly sure that we can continue to sell off this week. So for that reason, I am short on BTC right now, and my invalidation is above 106k, which I will again get onto shortly. But I believe that this is a nice place to look for a reversal on Bitcoin, right? One, because of the reason I said, the weekly ended up breaking down and closing below. Whether that's because of the war news or not, you know, who cares? It's all if, buts and maybes. We play the chart. As of right now, what we can see is that Bitcoin broke below, you know, this daily range high, right? 2 times prices attempted to trade above this daily range high. 2 times it has failed. And now we've officially broken under back inside this daily range and retesting this high volume node POC. So depending how we react around this high volume node POC, will be telling on whether we're going to continue to roll and maybe we've local topped for summer, where we roll, we bottom into sort of July, August, down towards 90s to 80s before rallying into Q4, like I just said, right? So my invalidation for the short is above 106k, basically because if this news is positive, right, and the market reacts to it positively today, and we get this sort of like bounce above 106k, that's going to look really good, right? Because we got that V shape, and above here I'll probably flip bias targeting 110, and then probably looking at rolling over once again. We've also got the chance at like a daily bull flag here, which we should keep an eye on this. If this daily bull flag if we get this move above 106k, come back down to retest 106 and hold it, I'm fairly sure we can break out, right? We get that daily bull flag. At the end of the day, we are continuing to hold somewhat into this weekly support, right? The weekly support has not necessarily been lost just yet. If you remember my comments in the episode from 2 weeks ago, this sort of retest of this range high kind of is reminiscent of this retest back here where we flagged into key support, right? Again, we're sort of flagging into key support, and I think there's potential for this to break out. So I am short right now, but I'm really not like married to my bias, and depending on the reaction on today's open, I will and if we can reclaim 106, I will cut my short position. I will not let this run to 110k. This is just a bit of a safe stop while I slept overnight. But overall, above 106k, I will look at cutting my position on this. So yeah, looking at Bitcoin, right, like historically, once we get these like daily meme line breakouts, we start to see some breakout from Bitcoin. So that brings me back to what I was just saying, right? Is if we break out here, there's probably a good chance, as long as we hold 106 on a retest, what we have is this kind of like this over under price action, right? Like that, and then we probably break out into July, into August, right? And that's kind of the only scenario right now that would get me bullish, is if one, we react well on New York Open, right? This is scenario one, because obviously we've had this positive news come out of the Iran and USA situation, and two is reclaim 106k, right? So this is the reason why I would flip bullish or buller would be a breakout, positive and reaction, and reclaim 106, and I think we can maybe break out. Otherwise, I'm fairly confident that, you know, we're looking at a similar thing like we have done in the past 2 Junes, where we topped in June and bled out for summer, right? So for that reason, you know, we get that monthly risking off, potentially bearish retesting here. You know, if we look at the daily, right, this is potentially looking like a sort of bearish retest, right? And, you know, failed to break out multiple times now. If we don't break out this time, I'm fairly sure we're going to roll. So it's a very thin line right now in terms of bullish and bearish, and obviously it's very reactive to any real world news that is happening right now. When we look at S&P 500, obviously this is basically at all-time high. It's now trading above the May all-time high. Meanwhile, BTC is still trading now 6% below the May highs. So it's something to consider here, right? That the S&P 500 clearly has a lot more strength than Bitcoin in this case. And I don't want to ramble on for too much longer because, you know, like I said, there was a lot to talk about today. But we have to consider the fact that, okay, if the S&P 500 is strong, does Bitcoin play catch up soon? Above 106k, then I think that is the case, and this is basically what we're going to look at right now. Okay, so below 106k, I'm fairly sure that price can roll, retest 101, and maybe even as low as 96. Reclaim 106k, right? This is my current idea, right? This is option 1, which I'm currently short on. Option 2 is if we start to reclaim 106, if we get a breakout, right? Like I said, we get that like daily breakout. Yeah, reclaim 106. I think I would look to take a long, targeting 110, and then from 110, if we retest 106 again, I will again look at looking for this area to hold as support for a breakout in June and August, right? But the chances of a summer breakout right now are fairly minimal. Obviously, as we move into summer months, the chances of just chopping are more and more likely. So not overthinking this PA too much is quite important. Overall, that's all my thoughts for today. ETH is potentially bearish retesting 2500. ETH needs to get back above 2500, and there's probably a good chance of this legging up. But until then, I think there's a risk of this sort of bearish retesting and going back down towards 2k over the next couple of weeks into July. Above 2500, I might look at taking a position to target 3k. This would probably align with the scenario of BTC flipping 106k. So to quickly summarize, 106k is really important. I am currently short, my invalidation is above there. If we flip 106k, I will close my short and flip long, targeting these highs at 110k. And then if we continue to hold 106, then maybe there's a chance of breaking out. But overall, I don't expect a breakout in summer. My higher time frame thoughts remain to look for a big move going into Q4 more than anything. Expect a lot of chop over the next few weeks into summer. Look at playing the lower time frame. This idea I have right now for a breakout is probably in the near term. You know, as we move into July, there's a very, very small chance of getting like a move like this or a move like this, unless there's some sort of a huge catalyst like rate cuts, things like that to do with real world data. That's everything for this week's market review. A little bit of a messy one. Like I said, my head was a little bit all over the place this week since coming back from holiday, just getting back into the swing of things. I'll probably do a little bit of a shorter update later in the week, and I will see you guys on Wednesday for the educational video. Bye bye. That's just about going to wrap it up for this week's market review. A little bit of a messy one. Like I said, head's a bit all over the place this week. You know, we've got more things to consider in the world right now than just standard price action. We've got to see how things escalate going into the New York Open, and then I will reconsider my short position. Make sure you leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Obviously drop a subscribe if you are not already. I have a couple of more videos coming out this week on my channel, so keep an eye out from them. Check out the socials in the link below. Link to join the Discord is there as well, and I will see you guys at some point. Bye bye.